I think a few people might be down the hall.
Okay, we'll give it just another minute.
Oh, there's Joanne.
Same as this
Joanne, Dale.
So yeah, you're still missing it.
Dale never went up to his car.
Oh.
Excited. I said he's hurt.
I wondered if Mark was gonna go back that way.
And it had something.
In the middle of the week I might, but not on the Memorial Day weekend.
Thanks. Thank you.
Your fastest speed is as fast as the next trip.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Mr. Patton, the next item on the agenda is, are there any changes to the agenda and approval of the minutes?
There should be no changes to the agenda, Mr. Chairman. I will do my best to make sure you're out of here as quick as we can to get Mr. Gibbs on the road.
Okay, all right, let's, I think we were all given copies of the minutes for meeting 525 and meeting 625. Did anybody peruse those minutes? Is there any corrections?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move on meeting number 625 under agenda item number 3, Priest Lake adjudication claims, to strike the initial clause before the name and Wybar.
Okay. Any discussion? I guess I'll have a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
I
Any opposed? Motion carries.
think you still need a motion to actually approve the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, that was just,
That was a change.
oh, that wasn't a motion to approve with the change.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, What-
Motion to approve the minutes from 525 and 625.
okay,
As
perfect.
written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're to public comment. Did we have anybody sign up for public comment?
There you go, sir.
Okay, John Williams, welcome.
Good morning, John Williams with the Bonneville Power Administration. Morning, board members, Chairman Raybould, Director Weaver. I'm gonna try to be as quick as I can. Apologize for not being able to make your last 2 meetings, but there's been a lot of things going on with the Bonneville Power Administration. And yesterday, we just announced that we approved implementation of the extended power upgrade project that will increase the output of the Columbia Generating Station. That's the nuclear plant over in the Tri-Cities where we receive power. We're spending about approximately $700 million that will increase the station's electrical output by 162 megawatts by the year 2031. The project will improve or involve approximately 30 individual upgrades, primary focus on increasing the size of the pumps and motors. These enhancements coincide with the refueling outages. Additionally, 24 megawatts of energy efficiency upgrades will be incorporated during the next 3 refueling outages in 2027, 2029, and 2031, bringing the total increase to 186 megawatts. This expanded capacity will be added to BPA's federal base system power, serving our customers in the Pacific Northwest. Now, to try to update you on what's been going on with the new administration in Bonneville. During the past 4 months, BPA has and continued to coordinate with the Department of Energy to carry out President Trump's direction. In compliance with the federal hiring freeze, all recruitment actions are on hold, and we remove all job postings except for a few selected positions essential for public safety and national security. In addition, personnel actions are halted until further notice. A similar hiring freeze is in effect for supplemental labor. In accordance with the Directive on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion programs, BPA has closed its Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility program. Excuse me. We removed all DEI content from BPA's website. Other things such as staffing. In February, you probably heard that we had to let go of 126 probationary employees. These terminations came with the closure of the Deferred Resignation Program, or fork in the road, in which around 230 BPA employees accepted the deferred resignation offer. BPA's leadership team remains committed to doing everything in our power to ensure that we satisfy our statutory obligations and requirements. We're working to address the expected impacts through a workforce strategy and prioritization plan. You should know that after that, within a week, we received some welcome news from the Department of Energy. Out of concern for safety and effectiveness for our critical operations, BPA was authorized to bring back those probationary employees who were initially let go. The ability to reinstate these employees reflects a growing understanding of impacts of staff reductions on BPA's essential mission. We continue to engage with DOE leadership on our needs as we maintain continuity while absorbing staff departures. News about changes in our workforce has triggered a broader awareness in the region about what we do and why it matters. Our customers, stakeholders continue to express how much they appreciate BPA and have communicated this to the Northwest Congressional Delegation and DOE leadership. CEO Administrator John Harrison met with incoming Steve Weinberg, Deputy Undersecretary for Infrastructure, to share the critical nature of BPA's work, explain BPA's unique self-funding status, and describe how our key initiatives align with DOE's goals for abundant, affordable, secure energy. Last month, the department offered a second deferred resignation program in connection with its reduction in force plans. However, DOE leaders understand BPA's critical mission and our unique workplace or workforce needs. And they are working to ensure that BPA and the other power marketing administrations have the necessary staffing levels to continue providing essential services. With that said, BPA is exempted from a reduction in force plan. And John Harrison would have to approve the second deferred resignation program. But it has to be approved by DOE. Long story short, we had a number of people who did put in for that, and they were denied because John did not approve for those, for the second deferred resignation program. And that was approved by the Department of Energy. John and BPA's leadership continue to work with DOE leadership to restore BPA's hiring authority and other administrative actions that support our critical mission. With all this going on, here's probably what you really want to know. BPA continues to invest in transmission infrastructure. Last month, BPA energized the new Longhorn substation at Port Minoy. As part of BPA's large-scale grid expansion, Longhorn will provide up to 2,500 megawatts of new generator interconnections, support growing energy demands of communities, businesses, and emerging, across the region. Longhorn is part of the interconnection with Boardman to Hemingway. Couple of things just want to mention. The Biden-Harris funding agreement. BPA has paused all of that due to President Trump's executive orders. That includes the $200 million that would go towards the Lower Snake Comp Plan. So that is on hold. Financially, on Q2, revenues went up to $210 million. That is great. That is up from the negative Q1, where we only had 70 million. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I stand for any questions.
Any questions for John? Joanne?
Mr. Chair, John, is the additional capacity that BPA is planning to add, is that to meet future customer use? Or is that to be a replacement for the Lower Snake dams?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Cole-Hansen, no. We do not anticipate replacing the any output of the 4 Lower Snake dams at all. The additional generation that we're able to get out of the Columbia generating station is going to add to the federal base system so that we can continue to serve loads. And as you probably know, with AI and other cyber technology that's coming online, we're going to need a lot of generation to meet the new load.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
John, what's the status of the Columbia River Treaty now with our differences with Canada? Is it still ongoing?
So, Mr. Chairman, Board Member, it's been put on hold. I think I reported last year that the first part of that was the Canadian entitlement, in which we were able to start in August providing benefits to our customers. And they're going to continue to see that. However, the second part, which is of the Columbia River Treaty, which deals with flood control, that has been put on pause.
Okay. Okay, there it is. What's going on? Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate you coming to Moscow to be with us.
And thank you. And I tried to be as brief as I could to provide you all this information because I know it's of interest. And I know that the holiday is right around the corner and you want to get out of here.
We're fine. We're gonna be just fine. Okay. All right. Also, Brian Murdoch has indicated he would like to make public comment.
Board, my name is Brian Murdoch. I am from Blackfoot, Idaho. I am obviously one of the many Brians here in this room. I'm starting to feel like I'm in a Monty Python skit with all the Brians. But it's a pleasure to be back here and to talk with you. I enjoy the fact that I got to chase you across this whole state and get back to visit Moscow, which this is my 3rd visit to this city. And I'm very grateful that you guys are allowing me this opportunity. Probably because I was one of the 3 people that watched your financial meeting the other day. I caught something on your budget process there that probably I was not, what's the word? I was not in concurrence with, how's that? In which I discussed this the other day with Chairman Raybould and Brian Patton up at Idaho Falls, and that was that of the $30 million in which the session, this last legislative session was granted to the board through the JFAC committee, that only $2 million of it was dedicated towards recharge. And this was this was something that bothered me. How's that? Because I felt like, having attended those meetings, I felt like the intention from the legislature was that the majority of that 30 million would be spent on recharge infrastructure projects. I had to remember, as Brian Patton correctly pointed out, that this was also written by a lawyer, this bill, Paul Arrington, in which I noted that it said, instead of recharge solely, it said water infrastructures. In which I do agree there's other water infrastructures besides recharge, but I guess I felt like talking to the legislature people that was the primary intent of what they were expecting to happen. And so when there was only 2 million in that budget category, I guess that disturbed me. And probably, as I was assured by Chairman Raybould, that there was plenty of money that we could, you have the discretionary ability to also move money around. And so any recharge project would probably be funded and paid for. And so that wasn't necessarily an issue. But as I told Chairman Raybould there, it was the optics of it that I was somewhat discouraged about. And that is because we are having a trouble up in East Idaho, particularly in getting the canal systems to work with us. And that 30 million was a great, big, huge carrot that I think would lure them into being a little more pliable to helping us with this recharge. And so I like the fact that it was hanging there and that these canal companies was sitting here looking at it going, okay, here's an opportunity for us to make some money. Well, let's get behind this recharge push. And so that was probably the most discouragement that I had, was that big carrot in front of these canal companies was no longer there, and it was reduced down to 4 million. Really quickly, I'd probably like to add 2 more points, and they're kind of tied together. As I also was watching the next meeting on Zoom that you had, there was some discussion about the aquifer, changing some of the wording in the state water plan. Brian O, as I'm getting to know him, as on those meetings, suggested that there needed to be changes because there was 1 billion acre feet is what was listed in the state water plan. And I probably disagree with some of that, but I do agree that the state water plan needs to get addressed. The last time that the state water plan was really addressed and overhauled completely was in 2012. That was when Chairman Raybould was the junior member on the board. But, and the reason why I think it needs to be addressed is because we need to make the state water plan more of an actual plan of action. We really do need to see some surface water storages, excuse me, getting looked at harder. This is still part of all of this whole equation to fix the water system that we have, especially in East Idaho. And I guess I would encourage the board to consider a future overhaul of this state water plan, to update it in every sense that it needs to be updated, and also make it more of a plan of action with actual dates in which these various projects are stated to get completed on by. I also know that due to Senate Joint Memorial 101, right now we have a lot of enthusiasm for some more surface storages. Now, maybe it's not, you know, I'm of course a big proponent of rebuilding the Teton Dam. Maybe that is possible, maybe it isn't, but there are other areas in which we can do that. And just like recharge is only one component of this, and yes, conversions are another component of this. In my opinion, it's the less sexy version of how to deal with water. but it's probably just as important. But also, storage water, more reservoirs have to come online. As I realized the other day, as I was going through the numbers, 90 million acre feet. Since 1977, since the Teton Dam broke, we have watched 90 million acre feet of water go by Milner that we could have done something else with. And had we used that, we probably wouldn't be in the situation that we are in right now. Lastly, I have been advised that I need to do a disclaimer that I am once again representing solely myself. I'm not representing the Bingham County Groundwater District. I'm not representing IGWA. I'm not representing anybody other than Brian Murdoch and my opinions. And I guess I just wanted to make that clear for especially those board members who are watching this meeting right now. And with that, thank you for letting me speak, and I stand for any questions.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Murdoch? Okay, thanks for coming our way.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Patton, next item, financial report.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, Neely Miller will give the board's financial update.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just going to share my materials here real quick. Shared the wrong one. There we go. All right, Mr. Chairman, as of March 31st, 2025, the board's available and committed balances are as follows. In the Secondary Aquifer Planning and Management and Implementation Fund, the board has a cash balance of roughly $39.5 million, a committed balance of $31.5 million, and an uncommitted balance of approximately $8 million. In the revolving development account, the board has a cash balance of $37.4 million, a committed balance of $26.7 million, a loan principal outstanding of roughly $20.7 million, and an uncommitted balance of approximately $10.8 million. In the board's water management account, you have a cash balance of roughly $319 million, a total obligated balance of approximately $306 million, and an unobligated balance of roughly $13.8 million. Going down here. I'd like to focus on the ARPA appropriations. As you can see here, the 2022, 2023, and 2024 appropriations, total receipt to date of roughly $200 million. And you can see that asterisk there that staff anticipates a receipt of $50 million for FY26 on or after July 1, 2025. And then here at the bottom, I've got total obligated under ARPA of $250 million. You've expended roughly $125 million, and you have a remaining committed balance of approximately $134 million. And I have also included a note here that includes the appropriations that are obligated and unobligated in the water management account. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Hey, board members, any questions for Neely? Okay, thank you. Next, Idaho Water Transactions Program.
Yep, John LaFredo will talk about the transactions program and permanent acquisition on the Lemhi River.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good morning, and yes, for your consideration today. Yesterday, I presented on a permanent agreement for 0.52 CFS to help maintain the lower Lemhi minimum stream flow and meet the board's long-term goal of securing 25 CFS in perpetuity in the lower Lemhi. I'm just going to go down to the resolution here. Therefore, there be resolved. So again, there's five water rights with priority to 1875 to 1888, totaling 0.52 CFS from the L5 from the L7 diversion. The cost not to exceed is $114,000 for the water user, and additional $6,240 for the permanent administration of this permanent easement going to Water 674, for a total amount of this transaction being $120,240, with funding coming from the 2025 Idaho Accord Water Transactions Fund Bonneville Power. If there's any more questions on this, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, I think we discussed this in the work sessions. Anybody have any additional questions for John? I'd entertain a motion to adopt. Pat?
Yes, I would move to sign 3 contracts by the chairman, the agreement to purchase water rights subordination easement, the agreement to administer with Water District 74, and the resolution to make a funding commitment.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. Do we have a roll call vote? Jennifer?
Yes. Mr. Barker?
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone?
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Okay, motion carries.
Thank
Thank
all.
you, John.
Yeah, have a great
Okay.
weekend.
All right, Mountain Home Air Force Base Water Resiliency Project.
Yes, I believe Mike Morrison will be giving that update, and he should be on Zoom. There he is.
Good morning, Mike. We can't hear you, Mike.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, well, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, and it's good for you to have me here. I guess, am I going to be sharing my screen to do this, or are we going to do something different?
Yes, share your screen.
Okay. Give me just a second to get my act together, please. Okay, can everybody see my my first slide there, the one I always put up with this presentation?
Yes, we've got it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so project status. This is mostly good news. The facility is operational. In fact, Mr. Ferguson and I went out there a couple of days ago on Wednesday, and we launched pumping water into a 3 million gallon tank on Mountain Air Force Base. And one thing that's significant about that is it means that we have met the beneficial use requirement needed for the water rights obtained from Simplot. So that square we've got filled. So we use that water to not only test our system, but we've also used it to test the tank at Mountain Home Air Force Base. And they found a couple of little teeny tiny leaks out there, and they were filling them as Mr. Ferguson and I were while we were there. So that's a good thing. So testing and commissioning are underway. They're going to continue through the 28th of this month. We've got staff from the Air Force Base are out there. They're training to run the pump station. And any deficiencies that we find during testing and commission should be corrected by early June. So we are on track. We're completely on track for a handoff on July 1st, and that was the scheduled handoff date for this. But, and here's the not so good news part, the Air Force has indicated that they will not be prepared to accept this on that date. And I've got a little bit more on that in a couple of slides here. But first, well, here's the timeline left. When we first started a couple of years ago, I had a big long list of timeline items, and these are the only two things left. And as I told you, we think we're going to be done with testing, commissioning, and training by the middle of next month. And the only thing really outstanding is this handoff to the Air Force. So we're just going to be waiting for the Air Force to figure out how to accept a free gift from the board. So before we jump into that, I thought you might want to take a look at some pics of the facility that the board's money bought. This is the pump room. During testing, we did have a couple of little squawks. This valve right here is kind of leaky. This pump here and this pump here were a little misbehaved. We think the only problem with this particular pump here was that it was a sensor. We don't think the actual pump was at fault. This pump over here, we may have to pull that over the weekend and get it corrected and back together. So during our shakedown flight, we found a couple of things that we need to correct, and that's what we're going to be doing this weekend, but we'll resume work next week. By the way, even with the pump problems that we had, we were able to completely fill one of the 3 million gallon tanks, which was the goal that we had for Wednesday. So that's a picture of the pump room. Another picture of the pump room. I don't think it's intentional, but most of the hardware in here is red, white, and blue. And that's the electrical room. The last time I showed you a picture of that, there was nothing there. This out here, there was a design change on the surge tank, and somehow we missed the fact that it would need to be insulated and cold proofed. So that's one of the squawks that we're working on our punch list. It's going to be completed by the middle of next month. And so the Air Force, the gift package delay. On March 20th, the Air Force notified the board that it would not be ready to accept ownership of board-constructed facilities by the planned July 1st handoff date. And the Air Force has not been particularly transparent about the issue, but evidently somebody at the property office forgot to submit the required paperwork that needed to be reviewed by the Corps of Engineers. They're not doing a design review. The Corps of Engineers is simply reviewing the easements, rights of way, and other property rights that are associated with this project. Anyway, I am not aware that that paperwork has yet been submitted. And so we are working to minimize the delay. We've got lots of ideas out there. We've under one proposed version of the idea, maybe all of the work that we did, or slight tweaks to the work that we did, and getting all of those property rights, since we did that relatively recently, might be good enough for the Air Force. We're pursuing that very, very heavily. Ms. Carter and Mr. Ferguson have spent a huge amount of time on that, seeing if we can still meet that July 1st date. But the Air Force is not committed to being able to meet that date. Another thing that the Air Force has done is they proposed an operating agreement under which the Air Force would be able to operate the pump station. They provided us kind of a draft, but it was missing a lot of really, really important stuff. And so, again, we haven't made a lot of progress on that either. But one way or another, we've got a pump station that's done. And anytime the Air Force wants to get it, I'm sure the board will be happy to give it to you. So with that, I normally say I'd stand for questions, but I'm actually sitting here at my desk, so I'll sit for questions.
Okay, board members, any questions?
Chairman?
Al?
Mike, is there a plan to put water on the ground by the Air Force?
Mr. Chairman, I think that was Mr. Barker, am I right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, you're very, very small on my screen. Anyway, yeah, they have some kind of a plan. They haven't really revealed it to us. We know that they had one version of the plan a while back that honestly, just from a hydraulic point of view, could not work. And they've come back with something else. We saw them out there welding this is plastic pipe welding, but welding a bunch of pipe that we think was going out to an area that they can drain the water to. But I don't, Ms. Carter could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that is necessary for the board's beneficial use for the supply. Ms. Carter, am I correct?
I believe that the use for testing the water on the Air Force Base qualifies as beneficial use to the extent that we would need to satisfy the terms of the agreement with Simplot.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Okay, maybe Megan, Mike, belt and suspenders, maybe if we loaded a water truck and went and watered the putting green at the golf course or something, might not be a bad idea.
So, Mr. Chairman, that is really up to the Air Force. We've delivered water to the Air Force. We have tested a facility that's on the Air Force Base. That water tank, it's a really big tank. It's 45 feet tall and 120 feet in diameter. So it's a very big tank. We filled that with water. They were able to do leak checking on it. We're going to be doing leak checking on the second tank, and they did the leak checking on it, and they were out there actually fixing. They're very, very small little leaks that were coming out of the interface between the concrete and the bottom of the tank. A portion of our system sits on the Air Force Base, and of course we tested those valves and other portions of the system that are on the base itself. So those tanks are on the base. So I believe that we have met. I'll leave that to the attorneys to say whether that's beneficial use, but we certainly have done things for the benefit of the Air Force Base with that water.
Okay.
Chairman, have we notified Simplot?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, I might be able to speak to that. So I think following on this conversation, staff is actually working on a proposed memo and certification of how this process has been reviewed in the field, what has actually occurred, and our proposal is to draft a letter for the chairman's signature to engage and correspond with Simplot to ensure that everyone's in agreement that those terms have been met.
Okay, all right, that'll do.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Hey, thanks for checking in with us, Mike.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Raybould, and I hope that by the next time I come to visit you folks, that I will be able to tell you that we no longer own a pump station. So,
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks. Okay, Mr. Patton, the ESPA telemetry and monitoring grant awards.
Yeah, I think Justin Ferguson will talk about those, and he's also on Zoom from Boise.
Welcome, Justin.
Hey, good to see you all. Thanks for having me.
You've heard Justin's pretty busy, so we're chaining him to his desk.
Yeah, well.
At the end of this, I was going to follow Mike's lead and sit for any questions you might have. But
the next time we meet, Mike and Justin will have to come to Moscow and be on Zoom, and we'll be in Southern Idaho.
Let's see. Getting started with this. So just a quick refresher on the program. It was a partnership between the board and Reclamation where funds were awarded to the board. It was about $2 million for the installation of telemetry and monitoring equipment. Couple of key things to hit about this. Eligible projects. It was groundwater and surface water diversions within the ESPA, and it was specifically for the installation of the equipment. Eligible entities, we kept it standard with your other programs, groundwater districts, irrigation districts, things of that nature. The geographic area was also limited to the ESPA, but the big one I wanted to hit was the grant award limit. It was a 50% cost share up to $250,000 per application. Staff took this to the Finance Committee earlier this week for an approval. Getting down here to the applications, 11 applications were received. they all scored really highly with our review team. And so staff's recommendation is that the board fund the whole 566,504.43. And I can pause there before I jump to the resolution if anyone has any questions.
Any questions?
Okay. Get that real quick. All right. So a little bit of background on the project, but jumping down to line 26, then now therefore it be resolved that the board approves the award of the telemetry and monitoring grant funding as specified in attachment A to this resolution. And then I wanted to note that we made sure to add the recommendation of the not to exceed the 566,504.43. The other big one I wanted to bring to your attention was line 30. Now, be it further resolved that funding for the projects will be dispersed as funding is made available from the Bureau of Reclamation. I'm working with them. We check in often to see where that funding is at. And as soon as I have a status update, I can let you know. But past that, that's the end of my resolution. And I can sit for any questions.
Any questions for Justin, board members? Okay, I'm not seeing any, Justin. We've reviewed the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt this resolution.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? We'll proceed with the roll call vote.
Mr. Barker?
I'm going to abstain. There are too many of the applicants who are represented by my law firm.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
I need to abstain.
Okay,
Mr. Vanstone?
aye.
And Chairman Raybould?
Okay, I support the resolution and the funding, but also I'm going to abstain because Fremont, Madison, and Andersonville Groundwater District are listed as a recipient. Okay, motion carries.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay, regional water sustainability list, Mr. Patton.
Yes, Cynthia will talk about this item, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Chairman, go ahead and share the materials. I think you all have those before you as well. And let's see here. I have to zoom in a little bit, Kim, so you can see this better. Okay. And let's see, move down from 2. All right, we have a couple of topics regarding the board's regional sustainability project list today. 2 resolutions actually, but I'm going to talk to you about a proposal, recommendation from the Finance Committee to add a project to the board's list. So the board is familiar with the list of projects that have been identified to support water sustainability, either for either regional or on a statewide scale. The board has been maintaining that now for several years, and the list includes projects that have either been identified by the board or by others in the water user community. The board can either support the development of those projects in a variety of ways that include either helping those project proponents and sponsors navigate a federal process, obtain permitting authorizations, or in many cases for these projects, the board will consider allocating funding to help with the development of those projects. So today we have a resolution before you to consider that is a recommendation from the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee met on April 14th to discuss this issue. And the proposal is to add a project to the list to support aquifer stabilization on the ESPA. and to specifically create an ESPA regional sustainability project. So I think we discussed this topic at length. You do have a resolution before you. I'd like to make sure that it captures the intent of the recommendation from the Finance Committee. You'll note that the recommendation again was from April 14th. And the Finance Committee recommended not just the creation of the project, but specified that that part of the intent for that project is to promote and support activities to receive funding from the water management account in order to expedite the development of water infrastructure on the ESPA, specifically to support some of aquifer stabilization and some of the actions outlined in the 2024 stipulated mitigation plan that was entered into by the surface and groundwater users on the Eastern Snake Plain. We'll highlight some of these activities that the board discussed or the Finance Committees discussed incorporating into that project or funding under this project in both the spending plan discussion and in some of the criteria for some of the grant programs in the upcoming agenda items. But again, specifically, those activities you'll see on row 14 here could include projects and programs that support Surface Water Coalition measuring and monitoring capabilities, ESPA recharge infrastructure, ESPA groundwater and surface water conversion projects, and surface water operational efficiencies. The Finance Committee also recognized that House Bill 445 that was passed during the 2025 legislature appropriated $30 million and specifically for water project development and infrastructure, but directed the board in fiscal year 2026 to dedicate those funds to supporting projects on the ESPA in support of the mitigation plan. So through this resolution, the board, as it's written, the board would approve the addition of an ESPA regional water sustainability project and to add that to that priority list. And the board will also commit to developing programs that identify specific projects under this ESPA project and commit funding from the water management account as well as potentially other sources to cover eligible projects. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions or comments or suggested edits to this resolution.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments? Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I would move to adopt the resolution and note that we got not much time to get this done, so let's get after it.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. This involves potential funding. I think we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Barker?
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone?
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Aye, motion carries.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
I'm gonna
who's next sub-item is criteria. Is
That is Neely, and I'm just moving his portion of the materials.
okay. Welcome back, Neely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to be in front of you again. Today I'll be discussing proposed criteria update for the Regional Water Sustainability Projects priority list. I would remind you that staff has discussed these proposed updates to the criteria with the Finance Committee, and that occurred on May 12th. And I have prepared a resolution, and the criteria is attached to that resolution. So I'll scroll to the criteria real quick and just highlight some of the changes that were made. One of the major changes was process for inclusion on the list. Previously, there were two ways to get on the list. The first is project sponsors can submit a request for the board project, could submit a request for the board to add the project to the list at one time per year in December. And what this proposed change does is allow that request to be done at any time throughout the year. And then the second significant change to this criteria is the considerations for inclusion on the list. And this first bullet is what has been added. The project demonstrates broad stakeholder support, including legislative support. And with that, that is the recommendation from the Finance Committee, and I would stand for any questions on the resolution. And I'll scroll up to the now therefores. Pretty.
That is a nice short resolution. Board members, do you have any questions for Neely on the criteria that he just give us an overview of? Joanne.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to point out, since we are in Moscow, and thank the board for coming to Moscow in Pacific time specifically, that PBAC is a project that is on the regional sustainability list. And even though that the water may ultimately be used for municipal water purposes, it's actually a supply issue, a project to increase or stabilize the supply for the Palouse Basin aquifer. And so I'm hopeful that they will remain on this list.
Okay, I think they will stay on the list. I've heard no one say they shouldn't be on the list.
That's right.
So there we go. Any additional comments? Okay, we have a resolution before us. Is there a motion to adopt?
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Okay. You want to roll call? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I understand Mr. Doug Jones is online and would like to talk to us a little bit about Lost Valley. Is that all true and correct, Jennifer?
Yes.
Welcome, Mr. Jones.
And Lost Valley is a project that is on the regional water sustainability list.
Yes, that's true. What can you tell us today? You been out counting squirrels or what's going on?
No, we counted squirrels last year. First, Mr. Chairman, thanks to the board for the grant you gave us to work on Lost Valley. And secondly, big thanks to Jennifer for helping put me at this slot on the agenda since I wasn't there in person for the public comment period. The update is fairly straightforward, but fairly complicated. As you have heard us discuss numerous times in the past as we've worked on this project, one of the things we considered to be a stumbling block was the acceptance by the Forest Service of our standard Form 299, what they call an SF 299. The district ranger out of New Meadows that we work with had been very good, had arranged for us to make a presentation to the full Payette Forest Management Group, which meets monthly, Forest Supervisor, his assistant, the district rangers, etc. We had that all scheduled in February. We were prepared to go to council and meet with them. The Friday afternoon before we were going to go to council the next week, we were notified that the meeting had been canceled. With no explanation. Well, by early the following week, we found out the explanation was Doge had hit the Forest Service and the Payette Forest was going to lose 45 employees. They did follow through. They did reschedule a meeting with us. We went to council, made an hour presentation to them, to the whole management group of the forest. And then that was followed up by a couple of more Zoom calls on details about the project. And finally, about a week ago, we received word from the Forest Service by email that the 299 had been approved. And that means we can start to move ahead immediately with the EIS work. Sundance Consulting, you may recognize the name. They did the EIS for the Anderson Ranch project. It is our firm that we have under contract to do the work. They were having a staff meeting last Monday to assign staff and start to move forward with the project. So we think we've crossed over a huge stumbling block successfully to get that approved. We'll start to do the field work, the wetland studies. The squirrels were done last year under a verbal agreement with the Forest Service, and hopefully have all the data we need by the end of this spring, early summer period, before the reservoir is drawn down and everything turns brown, so that we can write the reports over the winter and submit them for the EIS to be approved somewhere next spring, and then we can start the actual work of contracting a firm to do the construction work. So we think we've crossed a major milestone with the Forest Service approving it, and we'll keep you posted as we move forward next fall when we've got the field work done and so forth. And I won't pester you anymore over the summer, probably. But anyhow, a major milestone, we think. Thank you to Jennifer making this arrangement for me to talk to you. Thank you for the board's support over the years and for the grant that has made this possible. And I'd be happy to sit for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? I don't
Mr.
see.
Chairman,
Oh,
this was probably more a question for Cynthia. Do we have a squirrel report from the Lost Valley folks? Or maybe Doug can answer that, but I haven't seen one, so just curious.
did you hear that, Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Board Member Barker, you may not have seen it. We may not have submitted it to the department, but yes, the work was done last summer by Eric Jensen, who had done the original report that you helped fund 5 or 6 years ago. We have that in hand, but may not have passed it on to the board. The bottom line is they only found 2 squirrels last year in the area that would be inundated. So we think that's a good sign. And we know that there are mitigation strategies to deal with those 2 poor lonely squirrels.
Well, if you could send that report over to the department, that'd be useful.
I will see that that gets done in the next few days.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Well, thanks for zooming in, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank for Jennifer making the arrangements.
Okay, she's really good at that. Okay, next on the agenda, FY26 Secondary Aquifer Planning Management and Implementation Fund Budget. Neely, it looks like you're going to take that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Let's see if I can zoom in just a little. Okay, today I'll be highlighting and discussing the proposed secondary aquifer planning, management, and implementation budget for FY 2026. I would remind you that the Finance Committee met on May 12th and discussed this budget and recommended the attached budget for consideration by the board. And I'll jump past the resolution to the actual budget first. There we go. So here at the top, you can see the carryover from FY25, the general fund that will come through in 2026 of $5 million for water sustainability, and then the cigarette tax dollars that come through House Bill 547, that $5 million, and then the estimated interest of $750,000, bringing the total amount of funds to $15,941,425. I would highlight that this budget covers primarily the ESPA managed recharge operations And staff is budgeting, and the recommendation from the Finance Committee is $4.7 million. Cloud seeding program. The recommendation is for $6,828,290. And then there are several basin-specific items here, and I'm not going to go through them all. They were discussed at the Finance Committee. I'd be happy to discuss them if you have any questions. And that brings us to the grand total here of a little over $15 million has been allocated, and that would leave you a reserve for work and other aquifers that you could draw on throughout the year of about $763,000. And with that, I would jump back up to the resolution. Unless you have any questions about the budget.
Any questions on the line items in the budget? I think we're okay, Neely.
The now therefore be it resolved, start on line 81. Be it, so now there, or sorry, 78. Now therefore be it resolved, the board adopts the fiscal year 26 budget for the continuously appropriated secondary fund as shown in attachment A. And then it allows you adjust this budget as necessary based upon the actual amount of cigarette tax received or interest or the amount of carryover from fiscal year 2025. And then it allows expenditures for ESPA recharge operations and investigations to move forward with no further approvals. Expenditures for monitoring of the Treasure Valley model, Big Loss groundwater model, hydrologic studies, monitoring in the Portneuf Basin, Raft River Basin, Mid Snake for statewide aquifer monitoring, new monitoring wells and instrumentation for ESPA data gaps, loose aquifer monitoring to support the settlement in the Wood River Basin, professional assistance to secure federal funding, and administrative expenses may proceed with no further approvals. And that the operation and maintenance costs for the cloud seeding program may proceed with no further approvals. However, the board shall be kept apprised of those expenditures. Further, it's the board's stated goal that both the state and water users financially participate with Idaho Power and the cooperative cloud seeding program. Be it further resolved that the board may modify this budget during fiscal year 2026 at a properly noticed board meeting.
Okay. Neely's presented the resolution. Are there any questions or comments regarding the resolution? I'd entertain a motion to adopt.
I move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. Do we have a roll call vote, Jennifer?
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, I think we're okay, but does anybody need a break before we continue? Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is the water management account spending plan for FY 26.
Yes, Cynthia will discuss that item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. And you have materials in your, I think, online and available to you regarding the proposed water management account spending plan. This was also discussed at the by the finance and reviewed by the Finance Committee. This is a plan that the board has adopted since 2019 to try and I guess outline the goals for appropriations that have been allocated to the board's water management account over the last number of years. I'm going to move down to the attached resolution. Actually, below the attached resolution, there is the spending plan that was approved and recommended by the Finance Committee. Again, this highlights or outlines the appropriations that have been dedicated to the water management plan. It has a list of projects that the board has has allocated funds or budgeted funds towards over the past several years, and the Finance Committee reviewed those in their committee meeting. And I'll just highlight here, because this is a topic in the resolution itself, that there are still several projects in this list that were also have ARPA funding committed to those. Those are reflected with the asterisks here. They Anderson Ranch Dam Raise, the Lewiston Orchards Exchange Project, the Mountain Home Air Force Base Project, and statewide recharge infrastructure have all been determined to be eligible for ARPA funding, and the board has allocated funds from their ARPA funding for those, and has also set aside funds in the water management account in the event additional funding is needed to complete those projects. Another section of the spending plan that the Finance Committee reviewed and discussed the other day includes committing funds from the recently appropriated $30 million that the legislature, as we discussed earlier today, has specified should be earmarked in this upcoming fiscal year towards projects on the ESPA to support aquifer stabilization. And we can go through those today if there are more questions from the board members, but I think we discussed each of these recommended programs at length the other day in the Finance Committee. You'll also hear more about some of those, excuse me. You'll hear more about some of those in the upcoming topics in terms of defining criteria and setting forth a plan for implementing those projects and programs. And then this budget also captures the funding that has been allocated and continues to be set aside to support the Aging Infrastructure Grant Program. And then there are some other items that include loans, grants, and other potential needs that are captured in this final section of the proposed spending plan. In total, this plan lays out a targeting goals for over $380 million worth of appropriated funds in the board's water management account. I'm going to go back up to the resolution itself. And this is not a short resolution, as the chairman acknowledged earlier, but the resolution does, I think, through a number of its whereases, outline the appropriations and the general intent for those over the past several years to capture that history. It also acknowledges that in this past legislative session that $30 million was appropriated towards this fund. I'm looking for that line, Mr. Chairman.
70, isn't it?
Thank you, thank you. Yes, per House Bill 445 is acknowledged in the whereases in this resolution. And I think in summary, what this resolution will do would resolve for the board to adopt the attached spending plan as recommended by the Finance Committee. I might recommend adding a phrase to the end of that and reflected in attachment A. I neglected to put that in here. And the second, therefore be it resolved, is a carryover from last year's spending plan, which acknowledges that in the event ARPA funding is either there is either not enough funding from the ARPA spending plan, then these funds from the water management account can be applied to those projects, particularly if there are projects that are deemed ineligible for ARPA funding, then the funding you set aside in the water management account can be applied to complete those funds. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, board members, are there any questions on the proposed spending plan or the resolution authorizing the spending plan? Brian.
Mr. Chairman, Cynthia, and I hope this helps clarify for Mr. Murdoch on the spending plan. We've got the 20 million for the conversion projects, and we really consider those, a pure form of recharge essentially. And I think, at least according to Board Member Stevenson, a lot of these conversion projects will also have an opportunity to have recharge wells associated with them. So we're not trying. I mean, we're looking for all the recharge projects we can.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Cynthia?
Chairman,
Yes.
Cynthia, can you point me to where the New York Canal funding is coming from on this?
Let's see, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Raybould, the New York Canal funding is coming exclusively from the ARPA spending plan, which is not reflected on here.
Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure there was that. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
What spending plan, right?
And the reason I asked is because there were some ARPA funding on here. And so these are the ones that are identified as eligible, means we could use the ARPA funds, but we've got the money in this account set aside for that in the event we don't use it, the ARPA funds.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, to clarify, I believe the intent was to set aside some funds in the water management account in the event the projects cost more than what was set aside in the ARPA funding.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve this resolution.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? We'll proceed to vote. Roll call vote.
I'm sorry, were we going to include the edits that she had suggested?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, on line
Sorry.
81, we need to add that language referencing attachment A. Is that part of your motion, Brian?
Yes.
The second concurs with that?
Yes.
Okay, we're good to go then. Let's have a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon.
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, ESPA recharge program.
Wesley, we'll talk about that.
Okay, good morning, Wes.
Good morning, Chairman. And let me. Bring up a presentation shortly. And I'll attempt to make this quick, Mr. Chairman. There's materials in your books where I go into more detail, but just to provide a very brief summary of this last year's recharge activities. And so where we're at currently is 131,000, a smidge over. And thank you, Jennifer, for going that what.
You need to stop share.
Yep. Got it. Oh, thank you. Helps if I share the right thing. This way. Okay, now we're on track. And so we're just over a little over 131,000. Pretty positive we're not going to have any more recharge this season. The one thing I'll say about these numbers is they're still provisional. We're working with our partners to finalize them. And Water District 1. There we go. And just to give an idea of where it happened, as far as in the lower valley, a lower 122, upper valley, a little over 7,500 up there. And then with the wood, we also were able to do a little there. The other part of it is, it's not part of the program, but we also did a little over 5,200 acre feet for the cities as part of their Surface Water Coalition agreement. We assist them out in doing that. And just give you an idea of what it looks like. Pretty standard operations. It was pretty smooth over the winter months, and we're able to capture the little blip at the end when water became available for recharge. And here's where we're at totally. And so the things that I'll point out here is, so you're looking at 11 years, and to date, we're a little over 2.5 million acre feet have been recharged. Our average is 257,000 acre feet, and that's our 10-year average. The one thing I'll point out here is if you look towards, see if this shows up, this part of the chart over here, we start off with some pretty low numbers. And so as those go off, you're going to see that average bump up a little bit. So once next year, when this one goes off here, you're going to see that average bump. But then as we start going through these bigger years, you're going to see our average probably drop if we don't get some more big years in there. So that's where we're at currently, pretty much kind of on track with that. And with that, are there any questions about this last year's recharge activities?
Any questions for Wes?
Mr. Chairman,
Dean?
I have one, Wes. Was the Wood River, was that done at the Richfield site?
It was. Okay. Yep, and using the Dietrich Canal also.
Okay, they got that opened up. They were able to do it. Okay.
Yes, we're working with our partners to always kind of expand how much they can do and what they can use.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, gonna switch to our developing the board's recharge capacity. I like showing this slide. The little green dots are all the things the board's funded throughout the ESPA. And then the bigger otters, shades, the orange and the brown are the current projects that are currently in place and we're working on completing. And the other part of that is so in moving forward, all these yellow squares that you see here are proposed projects. We're working with our various partners that we're hoping to get as many of them put together for the July meeting in Idaho Falls. Not saying all of these will be able to get to put together at that point in time, but it gives you a sense of all the different places that we're looking at. Cannot guarantee this. Again, it depends on what comes in. With the stuff we know right now, we're looking at around probably $26 million in projects are coming up. One that's not on here is we're also working with the Northside Canal in the Lower Valley. They're looking at expanding some of the capacity down there also. And so we're working with them to develop a project down there. So what I'm going to talk specifically about, and you have a memo in your books about this, is the Brigham Groundwater District proposal. And to go into a little more detail here is, so staff have reviewed this proposal and the potential capacity we're looking at, and this was based off of recharge sites in the area, which is the Jensen's Grove and the Hilton Spill. And we kind of picked the middle of the road. We're thinking about 145 cubic feet per second of capacity. And I'm going to come back to the potential board capacity. We're looking at 112 acres. Pretty much you have the information here, so I'm not going to go into great detail. It's positioned, what's kind of important here, is it's positioned in between the Aberdeen-Springfield Canal and the Peoples Canal. And so this site could get water from either side. The Peoples Canal, the capacity is around 350 cubic feet per second, where the Aberdeen-Springfield is around 1,400 cubic feet per second. So what they're proposing is 2.5 million, and they're asking for the board to fund all of that, and that would include the purchase of the parcel of land and the engineering and planning costs. So what's currently proposed is that the groundwater district would pay for all of the construction and the development of this site and the developing of the various monitoring that would have to be in place and any permitting that would go along with that. And so with that, what they're proposing that the board would get out of this is 50% of the capacity, so of the water that would be delivered to the site would be for the board, up to a maximum of 45 cubic feet per second. I think I'll stop there. Are there any questions about this so far?
Okay, board members, any questions? Brian?
Sorry, Wes, you probably told me, but so the groundwater district would own the site then?
Yes. Pretty much that's been the program's kind of philosophy, especially in the Upper Valley, given they're so far from Boise, is they are the entity's site. And then we just develop a MOI, a memorandum of intent or understanding, can't remember which one, that basically, if we fund all of it, we get first right of refusal for reusing it.
Okay, other board members, any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Wes, the engineering and operation plans, is that going to be done by the groundwater district or by the board?
That will be done by the groundwater district.
And are we having any input into that at all?
Usually with those things, we have some input, but it is their facility. And one thing I will mention, that there's representatives both online, and Alan Jackson is here that can speak far as their intent, if I didn't cover everything exactly.
Wes, has Bingham Groundwater District provided us with an estimate of what the development costs and monitoring program costs and all that's going to be? What's the accompanying cost to the $2.5 million to acquire the property and do the engineering?
So the $2.5 million just covers those specific costs that I've listed here. As far as the actual construction and developing the permitting that's required, I've not seen an estimate of that yet. I think a lot of that, and they can speak to it in more detail, is part of the engineering is they're looking at really what method is going to work best here, as far as is something where trenches could work, or if wells could work, or is it a basin? And so a lot of that cost it would be hard to determine at this point in time until that study's done and they know what way they're actually going.
Okay. I'm just gonna make a comment and then we'll ask Bingham to respond and tell us more about their proposal. I'm probably okay with the 50% split on the credit for the recharge. I'm not sure I'm okay with capping that at 45 CFS if the actual capacity is really 145. So we probably need to have a little bit of a discussion about that, but it's probably appropriate. Alan, are you going to represent the district, or do we have somebody online?
Yeah. I can speak.
Okay, and Connie Christensen's online. Connie, I'm going to defer to you. Do you want Alan to get up and explain this a little bit, and then you can comment, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, I would let him explain it to you, and I can answer questions if you have any for me after that.
All right. Okay, Alan.
And Alan, would it be helpful to have this up, or would it be better if that went?
It's great to leave it up.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Chairman Raybould, Board, appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here today and talk about this project. We're pretty excited about the project. One thing I would mention, and I failed to, I think, get the correct boundary map on here. It does extend a little bit further down on that boundary map, but it's not a critical issue there. Yeah, the The viability of the site does, like Wes pointed out, is it's the capacity of the inflow that we can get there. There are a few places in the Upper Valley that have that kind of an inflow capacity. One of the things that I repeatedly like to tell my board, recharge either helps or it doesn't. And so, you know, I would love it if we didn't have to worry about who was getting the credit for the recharge, because ultimately we think 100% of the recharge benefits everybody. So the reason we came up with that, the maximum of the 45 CFS is working with department staff. We felt like that was consistent with what recharge projects have provided in the Upper Valley. The capacity to recharge projects per dollar spent has provided. And you know, the reason why we retain, why we want to retain the benefit of the recharge is because of the 2024 stipulated mitigation plan, which recognizes that if we do recharge within our district, it helps with our offset our pumping. And that's something that I think, you know, universally surface water and groundwater users have acknowledged, that we want to be able to do everything we can to make sure that as many acres as possible stay in production. And that's something that's been universally supported. So that's why we want to retain that capacity. And we felt like the maximum 45, so up to 45 CFS capacity was consistent with what had been spent on recent projects, similar projects in the Upper Valley. And I do want to express appreciation to the board and the staff. We worked quickly on this project. It's an opportunity that came up pretty quickly, and a little bit unexpectedly. But they worked very quickly with us and identified this. And I think Wes did a really good job of explaining the project. Any questions?
Any questions? Joanne?
Mr. Chair, is the benefit to the board, the 50/50 benefit, is it as the water's recharged? So the first, if there's 2 CFS recharge, one goes to Bingham and one goes to the board?
Correct.
Okay. So it's not 45 and then 45.
Right, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
How we carry this out. Just mentioned that we're still trying to figure out how this is going to work in terms of, are there going to be trenches? Are there going to be an infiltration basin? Are there going to be injection wells? And Alan, as you know, we've had all kinds of questions about injection wells. And so I'm a little concerned about saying, well, you guys get to decide all of that by yourself, and then we're going to be responsible for whatever the impact of using injection wells has on other people. And so we got to figure out, what is it we're funding? What is it we're getting out of this, and how is it going to be used, and how is it going to affect other people? And that's why I asked about the implementation. So that's what I'm concerned, and so if you could help allay those concerns, I'd appreciate it.
Right, yeah, I appreciate the question. Yeah, and I think we would welcome the board involvement and the staff involvement, the Water Resource Board staff involvement in the development of the project and feedback as we go along. There has been significant commentary that we received about the injection well program, and I frankly look at that as an opportunity to demonstrate that it can be a safe process, and that's what we intend to do, is to show that it will be safe. The 145 CFS capacity that Wes has put up there, I would say that's a conservative estimate, but it's a good estimate based on what we see there. That does not include injection well capacity. So the injection well capacity would be above and beyond that projection capacity. But no, I think we want board involvement in this as much as possible. We look forward to working with department staff on it. And you know, you asked about input as far as the engineering studies. Absolutely, we want to have department involvement in that.
Okay. And I'll just mention that I concur with the chairman's concern about the cap, but that we'll need to work out those details.
Okay. My final comment, Alan and Connie, this is new territory for us. We've not funded any projects that had a mitigation component in it for groundwater pumping, which this does. At least I understand the importance, and I think most of the board does, of recharging in this area and the help that that can provide to improve the reach gains between Blackfoot and Milner, which is one of the goals of the 2024 settlement agreement. So I'm okay venturing into this new territory of allowing mitigation to occur simultaneously with board-sponsored recharge. But I think we ought to retain at least 50% of this capacity to go towards our target objective of the 350,000 acre feet per year, and the benefit that that can be to the reach gains, because we've got to get some more water in the ground in that area that will go to the benefit of the reach gains, and not to mitigate to allow additional pumping. At least that's my opinion. Now, I think we could have a further discussion about if we're going to split it 50-50, if the board agrees to secure the property and do the engineering, maybe we could have some additional funding available to help with the developing the construction, whatever, of the project. I'm open to having a conversation about that. Also, I agree with Board Member Barker that we probably ought to be in some sort of agreement of how we're going to move forward with recharge, whether it be in infiltration basin, whether we dig trenches, or whether we move on to injection wells. I think there needs to probably be agreement between the board and Bingham Groundwater District before we drill wells. And if we can get approval from the department and get permits to drill wells, I don't see any reason why we would withhold our approval to do that. But I think we should at least be consulted and have a conversation about it. Okay. Any other questions for Alan and Connie? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, my only concern here is that answering your 50% concern, this is the first recharge project you've ventured into that has a mitigation component to it. And for us, this is the way that we get some stability to be able to fulfill that 24 mitigation plan. And the capacity is unknown as it is yet, because we don't know whether we're going to be able to do wells or tile systems or basin or combinations. We're looking into all of it, but we feel like we need to be able to give our patrons the stability from that recharge site. And again, like Alan said, either recharge works or it doesn't. It doesn't matter if you get credit for it or if we get credit for it. If it increases the reach gains there, it does. And so it's not like we're going to be pumping extra there, but to grow a crop on what our allotments are there is very tight. And we would just like to be able to give enough of a cushion to be able to keep as many acres stable as possible. And that's why we wanted to limit it. If we can get more capacity there, I see no reason why we can't share more there. But with the unknown of what the availability and what we're going to be able to develop there, it's a little bit concerning for our patrons to give up more than what we have discussed there.
Dean.
Mr. Chairman, I'm like the rest of you. I think let's go forward on this, but I have some concerns. We've opened a door in the past. We've had a policy and the upper and lower valley, that that individual districts don't get any credit from the water board's water right. And so I think we need to be really careful here because we're opening a door that could have implications also in the lower valley. So, I mean, I'm not saying we don't do this and go forward, but I think the sharing part of it, we need to be very careful.
Well, I think let's get clarified, but I think Bingham would be responsible for securing their own water supply. They wouldn't rely on the board's water right, but they would have their own agreement to divert.
To divert at the same time,
the
boards. So it's just a capacity share.
Yeah, and so we're just talking about sharing capacity, and I guess just to follow up, Connie, I do think it makes a difference whether the groundwater district gets the credit or the board gets the credit, because as I understand from your comment, you intend to use whatever credit you have there to augment your 4-year allocation, and so the water that the water board recharges just goes into the aquifer, credits towards the 350, but has the potential to increase the reach gains. If you put the water in and then pump it back out, I don't see the same benefit to the reach gains.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
This is Dylan. May I make a small comment here?
Sure.
The idea behind having the cap, as we discussed it, is, as Alan said, there's a potential to do new and, we have different tile systems that could be expanded beyond just a typical basin. And so the justification for that is, well, if it's just a typical basin, we think we can get a large amount, a better amount than the board has gotten on any recharge, and just do a basin, and that's what you would get. But these other things are going to cost a lot more, which, Bingham Groundwater intends to put in that investment. And so if that investment boosts the capacity beyond what you would have gotten, then the board's just sitting and getting a benefit from that they didn't participate in. Now, I know you said that you would be open to, continued funding to help build that capacity. And if that's the case, then as Connie said, there might be a way to, include or increase that capacity. But I think the whole point in limiting the capacity is right now it's a basin. This is what it is. If we turn it into something more at great expense to our members, and the board still has that 50% capacity, that's the hang up we're getting. And so the limit is not meant to be you only get this much. This is how we see it as we develop up this basin. It's going to, still be a significant expense, even if it's just a basin. And this is what we expect to get out of it. But if we go above and beyond and turn it into something more that has even more capacity, we don't want to be straddled to that 50%. So that's the reasoning for it. It's not a slight on the board or saying, hey, we deserve this. It's if we push it above to a higher capacity system, then that's where our patrons would be investing in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
If I could comment on that, it
Yeah.
already says the capacity is 145 and we only get 45, which is not 50%. The other thing is that if everybody's going to have their own separate water rights, the water board's right might very well be in priority, and whatever new water right the groundwater district might get might not be. Now, if they acquire storage and put it in there, that's a different matter. So there's all kinds of questions about whose water is going in there to provide what benefit for whom. And so those are issues that would need to be sorted out if we're going to have to share the benefit.
Okay, just a second now. Wes, could you elaborate a little bit more on how we got 145 CFS? Is that just based on what you're seeing with in-basin recharge at other sites similar to what this appears to be?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And so Mr. Jackson was correct. This number doesn't, it just looks at the footprint, the 112 acres. And we just looked at Jensen's Grove, Hilton Spill, and went, okay, in this area, this is what appears, and we kind of picked the middle of the road of what we think's possible. The one caution I'll put out there, as with all sites, you know, until you put water on them, you never really know.
Yeah, that's true.
We've learned that, I think.
Okay, Alan, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted Wes to answer that question.
No, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to clarify too. I mean, we still follow prior appropriation. So, you know, we don't intend to use the board's water recharge right. And in the event, in the unlikely event that that the board drive was in priority and nothing else, because when the board drive is in priority, pretty much everything's in priority. But if that happened, that the board drive was in priority and ours was not, obviously the board is the one getting the recharge, because we don't have a water right in priority. So, I mean, we still follow prior appropriation on this.
And I don't think we would limit the capacity in that situation, just to chime in.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so, and the 45 CFS max, I mean, you know, like I said, that was consistent. We looked at 90 CFS, 45 CFS was consistent with the dollar per CFS capacity that's been invested in recharge sites in the Upper Valley. And so that's why we came with that number. There's no intent that the board would be limited forever to 45 CFS in this site. You know, if there was further, you know, hopefully shared collaboration on this recharge site, then obviously you know, there would be more benefit to the board in that.
Okay, all right. I understand Adam Young is online. Connie, he's part of your team. Is that okay if he comments?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Adam.
Chairman and board, I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I just wanted to, I guess, make one additional point in as far as it regards this 45 CFS cap. So when we looked at what the board has invested in recharge projects, we looked at what has been invested in infiltration sites in the past. Excuse me. And this 45 CFS amount that we're offering would give a much higher return to the board for per dollar invested compared to those infiltration sites. We bumped that up in an effort to basically do something favorable for the board in this case. But if this were a pure infiltration site, then the board would be getting a better return per dollar spent at 45 CFS than they've gotten on other sites, such as the Progressive Irrigation District site. I just wanted to help clarify that a little bit.
Well, there are other sites out there, Adam. I just did the math on the Egan Lakes recharge site. If we use the same math, the board investment here would be $562,500. So they vary. Some of these sites have been very expensive. Some of them have been cheaper. I don't know if we costed out the sites in the lower valley. We know that recharge is going to be a more expensive proposition overall in eastern Idaho. I would suggest that maybe we consider approving this appropriation to purchase the property with some limitations. What if we went 50% with a max of 75 or 80 CFS? Then if these other recharge options that you believe are capable at this site come into being, and you develop those, then that additional recharge would go to the groundwater district. I think we need some language in the agreement that says that if only the board's right is in priority, that all of the credit will go to the board. When there's plenty of water and Bingham has access to water, then we split it 50-50 and we cap it somewhere around 50% of what we estimate the potential capacity to be. What else do we need in at this time to agree to fund this purchase, board members?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if it is indeed, private water that's, purchased water that's going into it, then I'm assuming 100% goes to the groundwater district.
And it would be reciprocal. If the board's water rights aren't in priority and Bingham secures water, that's probably storage water, but if they have other water and, you know, maybe they get some natural flow water through the water supply bank, whatever water that you can make available when we don't have water available, you would get 100% of the credit for that.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it.
Is that?
Mr. Chairman, do we
Yeah.
have a contract drafted?
Purchase contract for the property?
No, a contract for this.
Yeah, we got, I think we're being asked to approve this spending authority. And I guess we're writing a contract here right now, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, you're coming up with conditions of approval of the resolution, which would then be inserted into a contract between the board and Binghamton Water District.
Okay. I guess the question before us is, with those conditions, is the board comfortable with approving this expenditure? And
Mr. Chairman, I guess, what are you referring to with, when you say those conditions, or that the 45? Or are we talking about the other concept that we would get half?
We're talking about half up to 75, 80.
I can support that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you remove the 45 max, I can support that.
But not a max of, say, 75?
50% would define it better than.
Well, I think based on what I'm hearing from the Bingham Groundwater District, they think they have potential to add additional capacity at their expense outside of what we would ordinarily expect from a basin recharge site, and would kind of like us to keep our fingerprints off of that.
Okay, I just have my numbers with a 50% quote and then 30% max.
So what?
The 45 is like 30% of capacity.
Yeah.
And it's also.
So Mr. Chairman, I can read off the conditions.
Why don't you inscribe, tell us what for. Okay.
So I think what's been proposed by the board members, and I think I've consolidated this here, is there would be a 50% split of capacity up to the board receiving 75 CFS. When only the board's water rights are in priority and no other water is available to the groundwater districts, the board gets full capacity. Groundwater district, excuse me. Board gets full capacity. Conversely, when the board's water rights are not in priority and the groundwater district does have water from any source, then they get 100% of the capacity.
So just to put a finer point on that, don't you want to look at how much of whose water is going in and you get that credit, so that if, let's say it's 70% of the board's water and 30% of the groundwater district's water, that's how the split would work. If it's conversely, if it's 30% of the board's water, we wouldn't get 50% of the credit.
Correct.
Right? So it wouldn't just be 100 or 100 and 0. It would be split based upon the amount of water that's being contributed.
Right. Mr. Chairman, the available capacity would be
prorated
50-50, but then it would be prorated based on, you're correct, based on the pro rata split of how much of whose water is going into the site.
And I think the other thing what was discussed was the concept that this estimate of the capacity is based upon infiltration basins, and if the groundwater district wants to do additional measures, that we would then evaluate whether or not to participate in those additional measures on whatever terms and conditions we would agree to at that time.
And I also have board would participate in the review of the engineering and proposed plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I think I think these are the conditions that will allow us to proceed with authorizing this funding today. We'll get those in black and white and get them to Bingham, and you can review them and see if that's acceptable to you. If so, then we can move forward with giving you the money. And I understand there's a little bit of a time constraint to get this deal completed. What is that time frame, Alan?
The purchase agreement we have to have the funding in place by July 1st.
Okay, so we've got a minute. Okay, so if there aren't any other comments or questions, I would propose a motion to proceed with authorizing the funding of $2.5 million for this project under the terms and conditions that we've set forth, subject to the approval of the Bingham Groundwater District, and take action on that today. And then if that's unacceptable, then I guess we have to come back to the drawing board.
And if they're approved, if the groundwater district approves those conditions, once they actually see them instead of listen to them, then the board will have authorization to expend the money, right? We don't need further action by the board.
No further action if the groundwater district's good. If the groundwater district isn't good, then we'll have to come back and.
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
Okay, so a second.
I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there anything that needs to be cleared up? I know.
Clear as mud.
Okay, I think we're really close here to having a good deal. Okay, no further discussion. Do you have anything else, Mr. Patton?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's proceed to have a roll call vote on the motion. Jennifer.
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon.
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, now, I think we're gonna take a brief break. I'm gonna say 5 minutes, which probably means a little more than that, but we'll recess for 5 minutes.
Check out.
Chairman, can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
So the way I see this is more turning into like a joint venture. It's not really in the realm of a grant. Is that how we're?
Yes, that's how we want to do that. Yeah.
Well,
This is not a joint.
no, it's not a joint venture. It's the water board's gonna provide funding, but we're doing this in a different manner than we have ever funded a recharge project. So we want to put conditions in place as we move forward. And Dylan, you can review those and let us know what you think. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. We'll do it and get back.
Okay, I'm having a hard time hearing you. We're on break and there's a lot of people talking.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get this put together after the holiday and get it to you next week, and you guys can review it, and I'm welcome to visit with you, and let's get this worked out. I think this is a good deal. This is a good project, and we want to see it go forward. We just want to do it in the right way.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Okay, I'm muting us now.
Who's that?
Right there.
Looks like Chinese or
Oh,
something.
Mike.
I think it was Mike.
They do already. Good work.
Okay, board members, let's come back on the record if we could, please. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Okay. We'll reconvene. The next item on the agenda is cloud seeding. Mr. Patton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. A cloud seeding committee meeting was held on May 14th. The committee heard presentations on several facets of the cloud seeding program, including an overview of the program, the science of cloud seeding operations and locations, which are solely in southern Idaho, and environmental considerations regarding cloud seeding. That meeting was, like all the board committee meetings, that was recorded and available on the board's website for folks that might be interested in going and reviewing those presentations. Public comment was also taken, and the board also invited written public comment. There will likely be a follow-up committee meeting in the coming months to consider that public input, and then the committee will consider next steps regarding cloud seeding. And that concludes staff's report on the cloud seeding program, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, board members, any questions on cloud seeding? Mark.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As the cloud seeding chairman of the cloud seeding committee, I was unfortunately unable to attend the cloud seeding meeting, which was kind of ironic, but I just want to take this opportunity to compliment staff on, I thought they put together an excellent presentation that was well done, scientifically based, and was very beneficial. I thought the meeting went, I did watch the meeting via YouTube later, which is well done, by the way. And I just want to thank the people that were there and the staff for their effort in conducting that meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, next.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd echo Mark's comments, but the other thing, have we received any written comments subsequent to that meeting?
Yes.
We received some that day, and then has there been additional comments come in since that day?
And all are listed on the web.
Oh, they're all on the website.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Criteria recommendations. Neely, you look like you're ready to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I will give you an update here. Let me just share the materials. Mr. Chairman, as you'll recall, about a week ago, the Finance Committee met and discussed various criteria. They did discuss an update for the aging infrastructure criteria, and I'm going to walk through briefly that proposed updated criteria and basically just highlight the changes. We clarified what projects are ineligible. Again, this is a statewide grant, and I think that this has been around, but we spelled this out more clearly as the program budget is no more than 50% of the total budget may be spent in a single district. Funding details, we still have a grant award cap of $2 million per project, but what staff had proposed and what the Finance Committee recommended to this board is that the grant would increase from 33% of total project costs to 50% of total project costs. And that is really the extent of it. The other changes are really just to make it consistent with our other various grant criteria where possible. And again, this grant has an evaluation criteria point scale where there are points. And we just clarified those in this update, but no real changes. And We did take out some language related to the application submission. I think we were building dates into the criteria, and the guidance from the finance committee was to make it more standalone. So we've removed those dates, and we've included a date, application date, in the resolution that we'll walk through here in a second. But I just wanted to highlight that. And we do clarify the process and the cost reimbursement process a little more for applicants. And if there aren't any questions on this criteria, I will go to the resolution action items. So I know in the water management spending plan, the board has proposed $20 million for round 6 for aging infrastructure. So I've built that into that second, now therefore be it resolved, that $20 million budget. And you can change that at any time when you authorize another round. And then staff is proposing an application deadline of August 1st, 2025. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Neely? Joanne?
Mr. Chair, would you prefer that we adopt these resolutions in together or individually?
One for each of them.
I think we probably ought to do them one at a time.
Okay, and I move that we adopt the criteria for the aging water infrastructure, the resolution for the aging water.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? We'll proceed to vote. Can we have a roll call vote, Jennifer?
Mr. Barker?
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone?
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. On to the next one, Neely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now go into the ESPA groundwater to surface water conversion grant criteria. You will recall that you do have an existing grant program focused on conversions. It's a statewide grant. What this is different is it's focused solely on the ESPA. So I just wanted to clarify that. This criteria was recommended to the board by the finance committee. I'll just kind of highlight some of the key points. Same eligible projects as your other grant programs, as your other conversion program. Same entities. Typically what we saw in that first round were almost all groundwater districts or individuals applying through groundwater districts. The key difference here is that there's an eligible geographic area of ESPA area of common groundwater supply. And the grant considerations here, the cost share is the same as you have under your previous conversion grant. But you have actually included a line here that although projects that had been previously awarded conversion grant funding are eligible, these projects are eligible. Because we do have some language here that if a project construction is underway or completed by the application deadline, usually they're not eligible. That still holds, but if it's one that's already applied for funding, so that first round awards, you would be able they get a second bite at the apple. And then there is a point system. It's primarily focused on benefits and effectiveness, and then there's some related to proposal clarity. And then again, we have not built in any dates here or a budget. We've included that in the resolution. And I'll jump up to that for discussion unless there's questions about this proposed criteria.
Any questions on the criteria? I think we're good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that we adopt the resolution for the ESPA groundwater to surface water conversion grant.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. Go ahead.
Any discussion on the resolution? Let's proceed to vote. Jennifer?
Mr. Barker?
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone?
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries.
And I would just highlight that resolution does include an application deadline of August 1st. So.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Next.
Okay, Justin Ferguson will handle the other two criterias briefly.
Let's see. There we go. Sorry, I had to wait for my machine to catch up. So this would be separate from a grant program. This would be an ongoing program similar to your loan program. So the idea here is to fund projects to install equipment, conduct efficiency studies to improve or reduce demand for surface water. Couple of things I wanted to go over. The application requirements show us the efficiency results that are likely to be achieved, have a good project proposal, and then tell us if there are any additional funding sources for the project. And then this last one is, how would the project promote state and local priorities under the 2024 Surface Water Coalition Agreement? So how this proposal, or how this program is proposed currently, is that staff would receive an application with those criteria. We would then work with the applicant to get a final completed application, bring it to you all at a finance committee for funding, and present it there, and then with a favorable recommendation, bring it to the full board. A couple of key things that I wanted to highlight here is that the funding limit as proposed projects under this project are eligible up to 100% funding. We left that to give you all flexibility as to the option to fund up to 100%. And then the contract term, funding for projects may be made in annual installments each fiscal year based on the amount of appropriations. Past that, the application process is similar. We've structured it to match the loan program. However, applications will go to the grants team. And with that, I can sit for any questions, or I can jump straight to the resolution.
Any questions? Let's review the resolution.
Okay. Background on the setup for the program. Improving operational efficiencies through the ESPA can help reduce modeled impacts to senior surface water users. But jumping down to line 22, now therefore it be resolved that the board approves the surface water operational efficiencies program criteria as specified in attachment A to this resolution. And
Okay.
attachment A will be the criteria as seen up here.
Okay, any questions for Justin? Okay, entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Jennifer, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barker?
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone?
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Aye, motion carries.
Right.
Okay,
And then the other program I have for you all will look very similar to the existing telemetry grant program using reclamation funding that you all have opened up. Let's see, let me get rid of this guy real quick. Okay, so this program, or this would be a grant program, and I've included the application date in the resolution similar to Neely's other programs. But this would be a program through you all using your funding rather than reclamation for telemetry and monitoring equipment. And something I did want to bring to everyone's attention as a note is that staff have proposed that the equipment installed must meet current IDWR standards. Moving through, the qualification criteria is very similar to the existing reclamation grant, albeit staff have proposed that the board could be able to cover new monitoring wells, the installation of flumes and weirs, along with the telemetry equipment, things that would have required environmental work through the Department of Reclamation had we explored that with the other funding. Eligible entities would be similar to your other existing programs. The geographic area would be limited to the ESPA. And then similar to the existing telemetry grant using reclamation funds, projects are limited to a 50% cost share up to $250,000 per project. A couple of things to highlight. These are the criteria that staff have proposed. How does the project promote goals under the 2024 agreements? Can you explain to us what equipment you're installing? one I wanted to highlight a little farther down is project implementation schedule. 20 points if you can get it done sooner, 10 points if it takes you 2 years, and 5 points if it takes you a little bit longer than that. Again, just a description of your equipment, have a good proposal, and make sure it communicates what you're looking to communicate clearly. And then the remainder of this is similar to your existing programs, the grant application requirements, the program administration. Applications will come to staff for review and then presented to a committee. And I can pause here for any questions, or I can jump to the resolution with the application date.
Any questions on the criteria? I think we're good, Justin.
Awesome. All right. Let me grab this really quick. A little bit of setup on the program. The criteria was presented to the Finance Committee back on May 16th. But then jumping to line 18, now therefore it be resolved that the board approves the criteria for the monitoring support grant program as specified in attachment A. And again, that criteria will be the memo. But then jumping to line 21, now be it further resolved that the application window for the first round of awards will be open until September 2025, with applications due on the last Friday of September, and a total budget amount for this initial round of $1 million. And that's the end of my resolution. I'd be happy to sit for any questions.
Hey, board members, any questions on the resolution? I'd entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. We have one more roll call vote. Jennifer.
Mr. Barker?
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone?
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Travel safe.
Yeah, we'll see you when we see you. Okay, state water plan and ESPA camp, Mr. Patton.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the planning committee met on May 16. The purpose was to start the process of amending the state water plan and the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer Comprehensive Aquifer Management Plan, as requested by the legislature in Senate Concurrent Resolution 110, in order to increase the state-funded ESPA managed recharge target from 250,000 acre feet annually to 350,000 acre feet annually. During that meeting, staff received direction from the committee, and staff will be considering that direction and will be scheduling a follow-up meeting with the committee in order to discuss moving forward in the coming weeks. Mr. Chairman, that concludes staff's report on the planning committee meeting.
Okay, board members, any questions on the planning committee meeting? Okay, thank you. Next up is the director. Director Weaver, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. A couple items for you today and an update. First, I'll start where we often start, which is with delivery cup proceedings on the Eastern Snake Plain. Last week, I issued a curtailment order. It determined an injury volume of 63,000 acre feet. Remember, we're now under the newest version of the methodology that deploys the model in a transient manner to determine that priority date. And so the priority curtailment date is August 28th, 1955, so that is quite early. Last year, similarly, we had an early priority date like this. We remember what happened, but when we got to July, that injury determination had gone down, and as a result, there was no more curtailment for the rest of the season for those people who didn't have a mitigation plan. As a result, we never really got into that list of water rights that hasn't hitherto participated in a mitigation plan, but is now going to be junior to many of these injury determinations at the start of the irrigation season. So we're about to embark on working through a list of more than 500 water rights that are junior to that date, but significantly more than 200 of those are for substantial irrigation use. So these are people that will have to scramble to get mitigation plan in place this year if they want to shorten the impact of curtailment. And they are under curtailment starting next week, I believe. I don't have that date off the top of my head. So I asked staff, before we hang any red tags, I want to have a meeting so that we can work through the logistics. And they came back and said they don't anticipate hanging any red tags this year. They've got the list of affected users, and we're going to do individual outreach over the phone or in person to work through these issues. So unlike last year, there's not going to be any type of large field presence where someone is surprised by a red tag. So, going with that news is the fact that we just got a new season forecast for runoff at Heisey from the Northwest River Forecast Center, and that forecast has continued to go down, and they're now forecasting 83% of normal. The reason that's significant is that's an indicator of what base flow conditions will look like in the Snake River where the Surface Water Coalition members divert. So I think we can anticipate this year that if this forecast holds, we won't see smaller injury determinations in July, and at the time of need, we will see larger injury determinations. And another point here is that this November 1, remember in previous reports, about 1,500 new water rights were brought into the conjunctive management proceedings with the enactment of the change in area of common groundwater supply bill that went into effect last year. So this November, about 1,500 new water rights will have to have mitigation plans in place or be subject to curtailment. And I know at least some of those affected users have been working with the nearest groundwater district to get in compliance. I'm aware of at least one mitigation plan that's been submitted in anticipation of that in the Little Lost area. We do have 3 mitigation plan proceedings right now that are in contested case status: Falls Irrigation District, Falls Water and Sewer District, and then this mitigation plan I've referenced in the Little Lost under the ranch name Pancari. And all of those are protested, and I will note one of the protest items regarding the Pancari mitigation plan is an interesting one, because the protest has said they're proposing mitigation that mimics the IGWA mitigation plan, the Groundwater District's mitigation plan. And if that is the case, they should have to come under the umbrella of the Groundwater District rather than have a separate mitigation plan, because we don't want a proliferation of a bunch of these mitigation plans. That would be difficult, I think, for all of us involved in the groundwater management on the Eastern Snake Plain. So changing topics, I want to talk about a temporary assignment I've been given as acting administrator of the Soil and Water Conservation Commission that went into effect on Monday. And Jennifer, would you pull up the slide that has the comments from the governor? And I received this message from the governor on Tuesday. And I guess I can quote it. I don't know, can everyone read that? I'd rather you read it on your own than I quote it.
Yeah, I think Jennifer's got it big enough we can read it now.
So yesterday I attended the Soil and Water Commission's meeting in May, and then also met with local districts well into the evening. That's why I wasn't with you in your work session on tours or for trivia last night, which I am sad to miss. And you guys do good work, but I feel that there's an expectation here that I quickly get up to speed on the Soil and Water Conservation District work, and there was an opportunity here to meet with commissioners and districts. And I am getting up to speed with what staff does. The staff that the agency has, they have 18 FTEs. Their central office is co-located in the water center with us. In fact, they are a sublessor to us in our space in the building. And I'm also doing a lot of outreach right now with stakeholders, because as you read the comments here from the governor, which I wish there was a little bit more clarity in these comments. It'd be nice if there was a North Star, right, where we knew where the governor wanted to get. But he's very much saying that we're going to act as administrator over a period of time where we review the operations of soil water conservation and see if there's any government efficiency or synergies between the Department of Water Resources and soil and water conservation. And I guess I can at least identify two possible outcomes at the end of this transition period. One is the commission says, thank you very much, Director. We've had enough. And under the authorities that now exist in statute, they can go out and appoint their administrator. So that's not an appointment made by the governor, but by the Soil and Water Commission. And then they can return to business as normal. But perhaps they could end up at the end of this process as a unit within the Department of Water Resources. And that there could be a relationship established between the Department of Water Resources and the Soil and Water Conservation Commission that is similar to the relationship that exists between this board and the department. That would take comprehensive statutory changes in Title 42 and Title 22, both in Chapter 17, which is the chapter that identifies and delineates the authorities of this board, and in Chapter 18, which is the authorities of the director. But that's a long process. And I'm loath to put something out there because I'm the new guy to the conversation, and there's a lot of stakeholders who have decades of history working in the districts and with the commission. And so I really think it's incumbent upon them to have a lead role in this process and this evaluation. Could we go to the next slide? I do think there are some synergies between our two agencies, and a primary one is in operations. They have a pretty large fiscal group, but operate a very small budget. So there probably would be some opportunity for our fiscal groups to merge and implement some best management practices for financial practices through that merger. We have LUMA expertise, which is something they're in need of right now. We already share combined human resources in a state office facility. And then they have people maintaining office spaces across the state, so there might be some opportunity for them to integrate into our regional offices and field offices where we do have space in most of them. And then the possibility for a shared public communications officer. There's natural synergy in the water part of their mission, and I will say, quite frankly, the mission of the Idaho Water Resource Board. So they have grant and loan programs and responsibilities that have more of a water quality focus than a water quantity focus. And then technical services. One thing I've heard from the districts is there's just insufficient technical services to support the districts. And obviously we have significant technical resources at the agency. But as I point out at every opportunity, all of our technical staff have more work than they can do right now.
That slide should be SCC rather than SWC at the bottom.
Soil and water conservation. Okay.
Soil conservation commission.
Right, I'll get it.
I don't want to get blamed for that.
There's definitely a difference.
You will.
I'll blame Brian for next time. So near-term objectives, I've described them here. But one thing that's become clear to me over the last couple of days is there needs to be some work group created. And I don't know what that form looks like, but the work group needs to consist of representation from the Soil and Water Commission districts that exist across the state, the commission itself. There's an association similar to the Idaho Water Users Association that supports the conservation districts. And that group really needs to do some visioning and planning around this. And I think it would probably be appropriate if there was someone from the board who participated in that, if anyone were so inclined to want to do that, Mr. Vanstown.
I see you looking at me.
So next slide, Jennifer. This is just the current interim organization. You'll see that Sasha Marston has taken over lead of that fiscal group there. She now has 2 direct reports. And we do have a really competent senior fiscal person in Soil and Water Conservation Commission, and Melanie Ziegler. And then I'm taking over 2 new direct reports. One is George Hitz. He's the he is the deputy administrator for the agency, and then their loan engineer. And this is a bit of a segue into my third topic, but obviously this is going to chew up some bandwidth at the department, which means less bandwidth to do the work that we're currently doing. And I'm hypersensitive to that and want to minimize that. But we are here at this point at the request of the governor to realize the vision in his comments in that first slide. So I want to talk a little bit about impacts across the agency due to a number of reasons to staff capacity and productivity. I am feeling at the department like, to a person, we have more work than we can get done right now with all of our existing staff. And we are now operating under a very short timeline to realize another governor initiative, which is his Idaho code cleanup. And under that, by June, we are to have evaluated over 800 sections of code, done an evaluation to determine if they are obsolete, outdated, or unnecessary, and then identify legislative proposals to take to the governor to clean up Title 42, I guess Title 43, although it's unclear to me who has responsibility for Title 43. That's irrigation districts and our newly inherited Title 22. And then we do have some authorities under Title 46, which is the military code. And as you can imagine, no one person has the expertise or the time to look at 800 different sections of code. So that assignment has been distributed across much of the senior management at the Department of Water Resources. Certainly the deputy directors and bureau chiefs and regional managers are now making this a priority at the request of the governor to meet that June 13th deadline to get the review completed and ideas submitted. This is the 5th year of the zero-based rulemaking effort, and we are certainly looking forward to having that concluded. But I now have the question of, is this going to be an ongoing burden that's on the department? Right now, we've been doing all of that work with staff that also have a day job, including our coordination officer, Eric Bowe, who you heard from yesterday. But every time we go through a promulgated rulemaking, there has to be 2 or 3 subject matter experts and facilitators that help that process be achieved over the course of a year. And again, this is duties and responsibilities in competition for the duties and responsibilities that are actually described in their job description for the job class that they do at the department. We also are getting legislation enacted that is observed by state employees as not being very supportive of state government and the folks that work in state government. And we can look back at 2 specific pieces of legislation enacted in the last session, I think, that have had, you know, a chilling effect on government state employees. The first one is the CEC bill itself. I mean, just frankly, it was insufficient. It didn't meet either DHR's recommendations or the governor's recommendations. In addition to that shortcoming, it also had what I would characterize as extreme micromanagement provisions embedded in it that prevented us from being able to award CEC in the manner that we have done for the last 10 years, where we are able to take that CEC amount, pair it with ongoing salary savings, and significantly increase the CEC the Department of Water Resources employees have received, as in comparison to what has been, you know, the general language in the CEC bill. Also, we are now in somewhere the 4th, 5th, or 6th year of CECs that target raising pay for the lower pay grades in the statewide job classification system. And this was an important objective, but we're now at the point where the people in the senior pay grades and job classes at our agency, those people that have significant workload and productivity and institutional knowledge of the department, who aren't seeing CEC that is anywhere near the average CEC that the legislature touts when these bills are passed. So if the average CEC is going to be 5%, say, that's average across all of the salaries at the agency. That ends up being significantly less of a CEC increase for those people who are above, obviously, the median point, or the average point of that salary distribution. And then just on a final note here, House Bill 268, this was the act reclassifying executive state employees as non-classified employees or at-will employees. And for as long as I've been at the department, there have been 3 positions at the department that are non-classified. And that means you work at the will of either the governor or the director. And prior to this bill going into effect, those 3 employees were the director and the 2 deputy directors. Now, per definition in code, any person at the agency who has an executive function now has to be deemed non-classified. And it's not unreasonable that many of the people that have been affected by this have lost some, I'm not an attorney here, we have a couple, at least one on the board, some property right, I'll say, in their employment status with the state. And that change has been implemented without compensation. And it's not unreasonable for people to look at that who have difficult jobs to do at the department and say, my position has now been politicized, and do I now have to fear retribution for the work that I do at the department, such as carrying out curtailment orders? And we've had at least one bureau chief evaluate that and say, I'm going to voluntarily take a 2 pay grade demotion, step out of leadership, take my institutional knowledge and management leadership expertise out of the executive leadership team at IDWR so that I can avoid working in a non-classified position. So that's the kind of effect that these bills have at our agency. I'm told that this law was enacted targeting a single state government agency. It was not us, but this is the blowback that we're feeling at our agency. So, all of these issues, they cut at our ability to be productive and efficient at the Department of Water Resources. We did get 5 new FTEs. We're working to build a new water administration bureau with that. We hope to be planning on that in June. But, some days it does feel like we take 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. Hopefully not 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards. But
we'll have those days.
I share this with you because you share the responsibilities and the expectations that our agency has with the public and the legislature, and these things make it more difficult for us to achieve those lofty expectations. Be happy to have sidebar conversations with any of you on any of these topics, but I am sensitive to the fact that maybe our productivity is slipping a little at the agency. We need to address that, but I just wanted to give you some context if you are feeling that as well. So sorry to end it on a little bit of a down note, Mr. Chairman, but these are important topics, and I appreciate your consideration.
Okay, any questions for the director?
Mr. Chairman.
Joanne?
Is it your impression that other state agencies are feeling the same as IDWR?
The only other agency that I've heard feedback from is from DEQ, and they're not feeling this because they had already implemented this structure at their agency. So it was the norm for them. And I don't know about any of the other agencies.
Yeah.
So Matt, there's a Idaho water users work group that's going to reevaluate Chapter 7, Chapter 9 of Title 42. There's no way they're even going to be in a position to make some recommendations by June 9th, 13th, or whatever that date is. So how are you going to, and then you've got people working on that. And in fact, not Shelley, Tim did a really good evaluation of those statutes last year, or earlier this year, I guess. And so how do we accomplish that and still meet the goals or the directions that you've got?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, that's a good question. So the June 13th deadline is to submit legislative proposals. So you don't have to have proposed legislation until August. So we have a little bit of time, but it is my hope that Chapter 9 and the reworking of that I see now at least enough consensus with the water users in the department that we can have that stand as our one of our submittals this year to meet the governor's objectives under the code cleanup initiative. So if we can get that proposal submitted in June, and if we can have that language submitted, in that by that August deadline, I think with some ability maybe to modify it after that, as long as that we're not, doing a 180 on anything. Hopefully, we can have that in place and ready to go by the start of the next legislative session.
So the proposal could simply be something as simple as we need to reevaluate Chapter 7, Chapter 9, and eliminate duplications in those, which that's pretty much already done, right?
Yeah, I think we would have enough analysis done at this point to support that proposal.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thanks, Matt. Gonna have to get you a can of no-dos or something. Keep up.
Red Bull.
M&Ms?
Red Bull.
Red Bull. Okay, we are down to non-action items for discussion. Pat? Dale? No. Dean? Joanne? Mark?
None.
Al?
Done?
Brian?
Nope.
Okay, next meeting, Mr. Pat.
Okay, your next regular meeting is set for July 24 and 25 in Idaho Falls. Following that, the following meeting is set for September 11 and 12 in Twin Falls. I have no doubt there will be lots of committee meetings in between.
Yeah. That too. Okay, all right. I think we're the favorite line item of the entire meeting.
Move to adjourn?
Yeah. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.